Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Okay, so we were doing the verse on Swadharme Nidhanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha. Verse 35. We spoke about this. We did this twice over yesterday, but I'll just go through the headings once. Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha Paradharmat Swanushtitat Swadharme Nidhanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha. Better is one's own imperfectly performed dharma than the well-performed dharma of another. Death in one's own dharma is better. The dharma of another is fraught with fear. We have seen that with reference to sense objects, form, sound, smell, taste, etc., certain objects are looked upon as desirable and others are not. These likes and dislikes arise in your mind in the form of various types of wants for which you are not responsible. It is here that the Shastra comes in. So the Shastra says, wherever there is doership and enjoyership centered on free will, wherever free will has access, the Shastra has its sphere of influence. The Shastra deals with dharma and adharma, right and wrong. So basically, Shastra is not meant for animals. Shastra is meant for the doer, the human being, the one who has doership and enjoyership. This comes with the aspect of free will. So the Shastra deals therefore with dharma and adharma, right and wrong, satya and mithya. All these are dependent on viveka and vichara, that is discriminative inquiry, for the person who is free. Therefore, the Shastra is not deemed to be useless simply because the previous verse declared that each person behaves according to his or her own nature, which cannot be controlled. So the previous verse said, Prakriter guna sammudah sajjante guna karmasu tana kritsna vidho mandan Krishna Vinna Vichalayet. And the Prakriti was supposed to is responsible, is the cause for the thoughts that come to you. Your Swabhava is responsible. So you do not have any control over the thoughts arising in your mind. But what do you have control on? On your free will. This Prakriti, one's nature, is only with reference to the appearance of raga dveshas in the form of various thoughts arising in your mind. It is true that your Swabhava, your nature, is responsible for the appearance of these raga dveshas, but whether you go along with them depends entirely upon you. And then there are always governing factors for any course of action. So, what is proper, what is useful to you, what is feasible, all determine which raga, which like you choose to follow or fulfill. Also, your level of understanding dharma and adharma. Certain norms of pragmatism and ethics, dharma and adharma, also have to be taken into account. So, we saw how an ethical person need not necessarily be a karma yogi. We're going to skip this because being ethical means you're just following dharma. But that does not mean you're a karma yogi. In order to be a karma yogi, you have to be a devotee. And for that, you have to recognize Ishvara as the karma phaladata. Everything is given. The body is given. Your work is given. Your relationships are given. Your mind, everything is given. So when you come from that space of gratitude, that whatever you have is given by the karma phaladata, then that ethical person becomes a karma yogi. Another difference is that the ethical person does not necessarily need to follow scriptures and be a religious person, whereas scriptures bring in the element of adrishta phala, punya and papa. Whatever you do has a result that comes as a tag, and that tag will depend upon what kind of karma you've done. If it is punya producing karma, you will get punya. If it is papa producing karma, you will accrue papa. So this is a thing that comes with religion. Religion talks of this. So therefore, a person can be ethical without being a karma yogi. He or she becomes a karma yogi only when there is an appreciation on the part of the person that Ishvara is the giver of the results of action. So everything is given for the karma yogi. So only when one appreciates the given and also the giver behind the given is there karma yoga. Ethically, therefore, one can be clean, but this in itself is not karma yoga, right? All of which has been pointed out. And then Swamiji spoke about spontaneous action. That is, if what you want to do and what is to be done by you is aligned, is the same, then there is no need for you to use your free will. It is spontaneous action. So thus, therefore, with reference to certain raga dveshas, there is spontaneity because you are in harmony with dharma. You do not rub up against anything. The laws are not being rubbed against. In fact, you are in harmony with the whole setup. This is the most beautiful way of living life, where your raga dveshas are in harmony with what is to be done, with dharma. But if your raga dveshas do not conform to right and wrong, dharma and adharma, there is a rub. This is why Lord Krishna also said here, death in your own dharma is better. The dharma of another is fraught with fear. Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha paradharmo bhayavaha. The choice you have is only with reference to what you are going to do. You have no choice whatsoever about what happens in your head. Thoughts just happen and you have no control over them. But whether you go along with them or not is definitely subject to choice. Swadharma means what is to be done by oneself, one's own dharma. Dharma meaning karma over here. So then there is, in society where duties are very well spelled out, each person knows exactly what is expected of him or her. That is how it was in the Vedic culture, where you have particular varnas, varnashrama, as well as according to the time, um, according to where you are, you would also be given the different ashramas, which is brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. So the different varnas were brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, and sudras. The four varnas, certain duties, were very clearly defined. For a person of a given varna who is a student, there are certain duties. Then, as a householder or married person, he or she has a set of different duties. So too for a vanaprastha, one who is preparing for a life of renunciation. Although such clearly defined systems no longer operate in the world, so the current world we are living in, and this is what we discussed yesterday, it is not in line with the Vedic culture of the different varnas and ashramas. One thing is clear. So, what do we have to consider in any given situation? There is a certain response required on your part in terms of action, and this becomes your duty. So, based on the time and the situation, there is always something that you have to do. There is a certain response. So, duty is not something that you have to be told about by someone, really speaking. It becomes evident as you look at the situation that you are in and understand it as it is. In this way, what is to be done becomes obvious to you. And if you do not understand the situation you find yourself in, you can always check with a person who understands it to help of someone in order to understand what your duty is in terms of what you should and should not be done. Someone who is more experienced, more informed, has more experience, or who's more capable and placed in such a way that he's able to spell out your duties can do this for you. The concept of swadharma needs to be seen also in the spirit of this verse. In terms of one's own karma, swadharma, what is to be done is to be done, even if one is destroyed in the process. Doing one's own karma is far better than doing the karma of another person, meaning that it is useless to want to do what someone else is doing. Do only what you have to do. So each of us in our own spheres of activity know what is to be done. There is a beautiful knowledge sheet, Gurudev, where he says, first write out what is not to be done. And then there'd be clarity about what you have to do. I don't remember the exact list in what not to do, but then he says, you are not here to blame others. You are not here to find fault. You're not here to hurt others. You're not here. So basically, you are writing out what is not to be done. So then, when that is removed from what is not to what from your list, then what remains becomes clear, and then you have the path chiseled out for you. The examples given were the goalkeeper as well as the nut and the bolt. Yeah, we'll not go through that one more time because the goalkeeper, he might say, "Oh, the ball is never coming to me, so let me also run." So that will create havoc. He's supposed to be standing at the goal post, protecting the goal post. Hmm? Similar to the nut and the bolt, thinking the piston is the one working, is doing all the activity. I'm just sitting and doing nothing. So let me also start working, start doing something. So if it decides to loosen itself up, and then the whole machinery will fall apart. So likewise, when we extrapolate it to the universe, each one of us has a part to play. And recognizing that part becomes necessary to understand what our swadharma is. Similarly, can any job be said to be really better than another? Which is better for the bolt, sitting tightly or moving? Jobs differ. One fellow's job is to sit tightly, another's job is to move. I mean, I just get the example of between a doctor and a nurse and a lay person. I think this happened some time back in India, where both the parents are doctors, and I don't know how on earth they got this idea. The child was only 10 in the 10th grade, and apparently he was performing C-sections and surgeries. So that is like taking it to another level. Why would you want to do that? Why would you put others' lives at risk for allowing a person who's not trained to be a doctor to assume the role of a doctor? So one is not to do the job of the other person in the overall scheme of things. Because someone is working hard on a construction site does not mean that someone else has to do the same. Working hard is not the issue. What is to be understood is that there are different types of work. Sitting tight is also difficult work because even though there is a tendency to move, you should not move. If, for example, you are an orderly in an intensive care unit. Similarly, each one has his or her own duty to perform in a given situation, and that duty is only to be done by the person whose duty it is. It is better to die guarding your post than to do something else just because it is more convenient, more remunerative, more likable, and so on. This does not work at all. It's a beautiful paragraph for us to understand and let the message seep in. You see this problem everywhere in today's society. If you have monetary satisfaction, you may not have job satisfaction. And if you have job satisfaction, you may not have monetary satisfaction. Because where is the value system moved? It is moved from what is to be done to what is the job satisfaction I get? What is the monetary benefit I get? What is the value? The value system has shifted. So you may love your job, but you cannot own even a small house Paying rent is also a problem, so that you find yourself still living in a one-room apartment. If you have job satisfaction, but such satisfaction does not produce the money you need, what kind of job satisfaction is this? A man who is in this situation usually becomes more practical when he marries. He gives up the job he loves and takes another. Because now why? He has to fulfill his role. He has to take care of his wife and build a family. So just going with his job satisfaction of just getting that little amount of money, where he was living in a one bedroom um, flat, was not sufficient. Now he has to, in terms of money, it is a better job, but now he's sitting in front of a computer all day long. The additional money providing him with no job satisfaction whatsoever. So, this is the paradox the current state is in. We are all in this state. So, coming to Swadharma and satisfaction, when we see someone else doing something that seems to be making the person happy, we want to do it. We want to do it too. But Swadharma does not work that way. In any given situation, in any given position, whatever is to be done by you, whatever that is appropriate for you, that alone is your karma, your dharma. This does not mean that you should not switch jobs. Both money and job satisfaction are important, but a number of other factors must be taken into account. So, in any given situation, in any given position, whatever is to be done by you, whatever that is appropriate for you, that alone is your karma, your dharma. So this means it can vary. It is not fixated on one thing. So if you are an artist, try to make money with your art. Produce something that will make money, something that is good. In this way, you will have job satisfaction and money also. This is the intelligent way to live. Otherwise, you will have neither money nor satisfaction. What kind of job is it, after all, that does not produce money? How can there be any real satisfaction in such a job? Your art will definitely be affected because being without essentials of life that money provides, you will often be disgruntled and your paintings become angry paintings. And then there are some people who will buy these paintings because they are also angry. So basically, in this verse under discussion, Krishna also said that the duty of another is definitely fraught with fear. Bhayavaha. So one thing is to identify your swakarma, your swadharma, which is what? In any given situation, the given time, what is to be done by you becomes your swadharma or swakarma. Whereas the duty of another is definitely fraught with fear. This is the other understanding that we have to get. That is, the duty of another is definitely fraught with fear, bhayavaha, when you take it as your own. This being the case, it is better to do one's own duty, to do whatever is proper and appropriate, even if it amounts to death, than to do someone else's duty. In this way, you will have the satisfaction of knowing that, at least until your death, you did what you had to do. Also, if you neglect your own duty and do something else, You will be dying every day of your lifetime. You will have nothing but conflict, regret, guilt of omissions and commissions. What was to be done was omitted. What was not to be done was committed, all of which is a living death. While you are living, you go on dying. So, living a life without conflict, without regret and guilt, and understanding what our roles and responsibilities are. What is your priority? One might have a long list of responsibilities, but at any given time, there is some priority that is to be done. If the house is on fire, you will not say, oh, my priority is to study the scriptures and continue to do that. That time you rise to the occasion and douse the house fire. So this swakarma, swadharma gives us that the choice of action, that free will to decide upon what to act. And doing according to what is necessary at that time becomes our swakarma. Anything else becomes paradharma, is bhayavaha, is fraught with fear. Because why? If you neglect your own duty and you're doing someone else's, then you are dying. You're doing something else, not even someone else's duty, something else, which means what? You are going according to your ragadveshas are not in line with with the dharma that is required to be done. So you're misaligned, unaligned with with what is to be done. So you basically are just following your ragadveshas. Exercise your choice. Even you can stop me at any time if anybody wants to share anything. Please do go ahead. Exercise your choice. Even though you have ragadveshas that have no connection with your dharma, you still have a choice. You can choose not to go along with your ragadveshas. You need not have anything to do with them. The only connection there need be is that they happen in your mind. You need only recognize them, nothing more. You can even be so amused by them that you will not need to read another thriller. Reading your own mind will be enough. Your mind can provide you with pages and pages of entertainment by your simply witnessing what is going on. But in terms of choice and action, you go with what you want in accordance with the norms of dharma. So, this whole thing is about handling our mind, which is being a yogi. Whereas bhogi is one who manipulates the world for his own happiness. Whereas a yogi is one who handles his mind. One's swadharma may not be as productive, as convenient, or as pleasant as one might want. Duties are certainly not always pleasant. They can be unpleasant also, nor may they be remunerative or convenient. But you have to do only that which is your swadharma. Even though it may be viguna, devoid of any enticing, pleasing, fascinating, or satisfactory features, your own duty is definitely better for you to perform than the dharma of others. Because the dharma of others is not your dharma, it is not to be done by you. I was just thinking about the essential services. Now, all those in essential services have no choice but to go to work, whereas all the others are allowed to, and it's fine for them to work from home. So if a person who's in essential services says, "Oh, this is, I have to show up at work. This is difficult. It's biguna. I'm not. It is not. It is not enticing. Of course, it's not enticing. You have to go to work, and that involves certain amount of risk, especially in a war-like situation that we are in a war situation we are in right now. But if he says, okay, I'm going to work from home, how is that possible? How can a firefighter, rather than be at the scene of action, fighting down a fire, say, I would like to work from home? I know this is an extreme example, but this is so what one has to do, despite it not being convenient, despite it not being enticing, despite it being difficult to do, if that is what you are meant to do, that is what is your role and responsibility, you had pretty well do it. So this is the one that gives us that yoga karmasu kaushalam, that that discretion in action. What is to be done? Identifying that. So one aspect of karma yoga is samatvam yoga uchyate, and the second definition is yoga karmasu kaushalam. So basically, understanding what is our swadharma, swakarma. Thus, each person has certain things to do, and these are what he or she must do. One need not do what others do. The one common factor between your dharma and others' dharma is that each of you do. The actions to be done differ, situations differ, expectations differ, but each of you do what is to be done by you alone. In this way, you find your karma becomes a yajna. If you can appreciate the phenomenal forces in your life as so many devatas, as aspects and features of Ishvara, and not just dumb forces, you give them the status of deities or God. For instance, Surya, the sun, is not just an implosion that is taking place. So you don't look at all the forces of nature as just inert forces, but you give them that status of a deity. You elevate them in your mind. And you're coming from the space of gratitude. You're saying, everything is given to me. This world is given. Beautiful earth is given. The sun is given. The sunlight is given. It can be explained this way scientifically, but it is actually a blessing. That this implosion takes place there and not here is definitely a blessing. It is also a blessing that the sun rises in the morning as a part of the whole Jagat, as the center of the entire system. The sun is a blessing. It is a blessing in every way. Just as the sun is a blessing, so too is the air, water, earth, every plant, insect, and so on. The elements are all forces that can be looked upon as devatas. By recognizing them as such, you need not tell yourself that you should work for the welfare of people. It will be spontaneous because by recognizing these forces that are working for you, you will automatically recognize fellow beings and living creatures. With this sensitivity, you will not need to be told to be kind to people, to be appreciative of their needs, to do unto others what you would have them do unto you. By being able to include the devatas, all others are naturally included. So beautiful this paragraph is, right? So basically, by recognizing divinity around, by recognizing everything in creation as a blessing, all the Panchamahabhutas, then what is happening to you is that you automatically become sensitive and you look at other fellow human beings as divine. So, how can you be unkind to them? How can you be otherwise? So, I'll read this paragraph again. So, just as the sun is a blessing, I think the previous one is fine, right? I don't think we need to repeat this one. See, doing according to your dharma becomes a yajna. If you look at the previous verse, there he says, Sahayajna praja srishtva purovacha prajapatihi. So um, the creator Brahma created the universe as a yajna, and everything in that is a yajna. So when you understand your role and responsibility in the world, whatever you do becomes your karma itself becomes a yajna. So if you can appreciate the phenomenal forces in your life, the so many devatas, then by recognizing them as a blessing, you need not tell yourself that you should work for the welfare of people. See, that doership will not really come. You need not push yourself to do for the welfare of people. Your seva becomes very spontaneous. Your action becomes spontaneous. It will be spontaneous because by recognizing these forces that are working for you, you will automatically recognize fellow beings and living creatures. So from being self-centered, you will start being selfless. And then you will start recognizing, being sensitive to others' needs. So you will learn how to do exactly what is to be done. With this sensitivity, you will not need to be told to be kind to people, to be appreciative of their needs. So see what is happening in the mind. The mind is shifting from this is what I want for my happiness to I'm going to do this out of happiness. Because you're coming from the space of contentment, you're coming from the space of gratitude. You're recognizing the whole universe, you're recognizing the Panchamahabhutas. And they're recognizing that they are there for others. The air is meant, the air does not blow for its sake. Space does not contain everything for its own sake. It is its nature. Similarly, fire produces heat. It is not to show off that the fire produces heat. It's nature to provide warmth. It's its nature to burn. Same thing with water. Same thing with the earth. So when you identify, recognize everything around you as a blessing, what dawns inside of you is that sensitivity, and you recognize what is to be done. This is so beautiful. This is the link between how do we recognize what is to be done? Because that is the next important question, right? So this is the clue. The clue is you be grateful for whatever you have. By being able to include the devatas, all others are naturally included. The books that talk about conduct and values, the Dharma Shastra, recognize this fact. If, for example, you cut a tree for any purpose, the Dharma Shastra says that you should plant and take care and care for 10 more trees. This is to ensure that at least one of the 10 will survive. I am told American forestry departments follow this rule now. So the whole aspect of conservation of resources, of natural resources, being environmentally sensitive, stems from this fact that you recognize all of nature as divine, and that they are there to doing their own bit, and therefore that helps you recognize what you have to do. That makes you sensitive. See, if we are taking care of what now, water might be a scarcity. We do not know if any of the desalination plants will be hit again, because most of the Gulf, all of the Gulf, depends upon desalination plants for their day-to-day, for their water needs. So if we do not recognize whether or not this war is there or not, it is important for us to use water judiciously and not waste it. Same thing with electricity, same thing with any of the energy resources. So, which is why Dharma Shastra says if you cut down a tree, of course, you cut down a tree because you require the wood for so many reasons. You have to plant 10 more trees so that you maintain that balance in nature. If you just go on deforestation without planting more trees, that's going to tilt the balance in the environment, which is what happened. All of COVID was a result of that imbalance that was created. Man has abused nature. Whereas when you are in sync with nature, which is how it used to be in the Vedic culture, there is supposed to be a Saraswat civilization way back, about 10,000 years ago or so, where everybody knew their roles and responsibilities. Greed was not the determining factor at all. They lived in harmony, including the king, apparently, did not have a lavish palace. They would all have a common bath. And all this is actually unearthed in the Indus Valley civilization. That is where it used to be, the Saraswati River, currently that no longer exists, but at that point, that is why that civilization is called the Saraswat civilization. So living life in harmony with nature, in harmony with one another, feeling belong to one another, and reaching out for one another, rather than looking at the madness that is going on right now. Stark contrast. I mean, you're warring with another country just because of your needs. Ridiculous. So far away from dharma right now. Not to say that the Mahabharata, of course, was a war, but there, that was a dharma yuddha.
This is weapons Yuddha. Each fellow showing their air show is going on.
Yeah. Mm. So the principle of non-injury. The thinking behind this rule is that to cut a tree is to perform an injury, himsa. There is nothing wrong with cutting a tree if it is necessary, but at the same time, there should be an awareness of the principle of non-injury, ahimsa, with reference to trees and all other forms of life. Jain, I think it's a typo error, spelling error. Jainism is completely based on ahimsa, as is Buddhism to a lesser extent. Mahavira, the founder of Jainism, highlighted ahimsa to such an extent that he instructed his followers to sweep the path in front of them as they walked so as not to trample on any insect that may be there. Also, the sweeping was to be done with feathers so that the insects would be removed from the path as gently as possible. When a person is talking, his or her mouth is to be covered to avoid bugs entering and being killed by the person. This is a kind of discipline and reflects an awareness that killing is wrong. By creating certain situations, as Mahavira did, there is a symbolic heightening of one's sensitivity. A person who sweeps the path before walking on it out of fear of killing an ant will definitely not be able to kill a fellow human being. This then is what is meant by ahimsa. Human values are all based on the principle of live and let live, and at the same time are much more than that. In fact, you live in the awareness of how others make your life possible, and in return, you make their life possible rather than miserable. Their life should definitely be as happy as you want yours to be. In this way, each member of the society performs his or her duty and gains shreyas. I will read this para again. So, human values are all based on the principle of live and let live, and at the same time are much more than that. In fact, you live in the awareness of how others make your life possible, and in return, you make their life possible rather than miserable. Their life should definitely be as happy as you want yours to be. In this way, each member of the society performs his or her duty and gains shreyas. And what is shreyas? Shreyas is moksha. Shreyas is freedom. Shreyas is liberation from the karma cycle. So the Jains, they've taken their sensitivity of not harming, of the principle of non-injury, ahimsa, to another level, wherein even the path they walk is swept, and swept not with a broom, swept with feathers, so that even those tiny insects are not harmed. And they wear a mask over their mouth because when they speak, some bugs, micro bugs, might get into the mouth and get killed in the process. So when your awareness, your sensitivity is heightened to such a height, when you are so careful about not killing even small little organisms and germs, then how can such a person kill another person? So human values are all based on live and let live. The Vedic culture is based upon duty alone, according to the person's group and stage of life, varna and ashrama. It was in the spirit of this culture that Krishna intends to convey here when he says, to die performing one's dharma is better Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha. If a man is a Brahmana, his job is only to study and teach the Vedas, along with the performing of the rituals, religious duties, and prayers for the welfare of the society. If this is his job, he should do it without comparing himself to someone else. That someone else also should do his or her duty. Remuneration did not form the basis for choice of duty. Duty was prescribed. So, the different in the Vedic culture again, this was in the Vedic culture, the based on the please note that the Varnashrama system is not being prescribed to cure the ills of our society. The system itself has brought about many of these ills, and no system can work forever. But the Vedic vision of the system has a certain logic and spirit which is to be understood. The spirit behind the concept of duty is still valid. So, based, we cannot, we cannot, uh, we cannot be putting the Vedic system in place right now in the modern world. That is not going to work out. That is not practical. But with respect to the concept of duty, yes, it certainly works. Each one has their roles, duties to do, and doing them will amount to doing their swadharma. The results of abandoning one's dharma. Because many Brahmanas have abandoned their swadharma, there are very few people who are capable of performing the religious activities that the Brahmanas are responsible for. And these few tend to be those who cannot be engineers, doctors, businessmen, soldiers, and so on. This is why the so called religious people of today are not truly religious. Suppose, however, remuneration and satisfaction are not the criteria in terms of what I do. Because I was born in a particular family and because my aim is moksha, I know exactly what is to be done by me. My life becomes a preparation for moksha in that it enables my mind to become mature, to gain antakarana shuddhi. Preparing the mind in this way is not an ordinary task. One's entire lifetime may be necessary to make the antakarana mature, along with the numerous lifetimes that may have preceded this one. A person can reach his or her 80s and still have the old phobias and childhood problems that he or she had before. It seems as though one lifetime is not enough. And because each lifetime starts with the same innocence, we have the same problems for which there seems to be no solution. If inner maturity is such an important factor and moksha is to be gained, what money do you need to have beyond what you need to live a simple life? Of course, you must be able to buy your food and other basic necessities. Therefore, the need for money depends entirely upon your aim. Because its vision is moksha, the Vedic society is based upon duties so that the mind may be purified and be able to grasp the vision. If the aim is moksha, there is no competition. Which job you have is not an issue. And because you bring a certain attitude to it, you love doing the job that is yours to do. You know that what you require is maturity of mind, and that by performing what is to be done by you, you will gain it. So, very beautiful. We'll read this again tomorrow, but let's just finish this one paragraph. Changing jobs is only necessary when the aim is money. Nowadays, there are even consulting agencies to advise you about which courses you should take, which field is currently open, where the jobs, easy jobs are. the better jobs, the more remunerative jobs. These agencies are staffed by people who earn money by giving such advice to others. The whole approach to learning and doing now has its basis in what will bring more money. For example, if a glut occurs in the field of chemical engineering, everyone becomes disinterested in that field and turns towards electronics. And when there is a glut there, those who are interested in electronics go into chemical engineering. Like this, everything keeps changing and people keep switching. So we'll stop it here. So basically, what the gist is that you don't go according to your greed, you go according to the need and the time. No doubt Brahmanas have moved out and taken up different jobs. You require enough to sustain your life. And in order to do that, you pretty well love the job, whatever job you're doing, you pretty well love it. Rather than focus on the value of money, if money is your purpose, then you will, of no doubt, keep switching jobs. But if you have enough for your needs and your aim is moksha, there you will not be looking after, oh, that person is getting so much, that person has earned so much, so even I want to earn so much. Your shift, your aim is prayers, then you miss the boat. Whereas if your aim is shreyas, that will keep you grounded in whichever job you're doing. So we'll park it here. We'll take it up tomorrow again. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. I think we'll complete this verse tomorrow. And then we'll do Manana on this before we go on to the next verse. Jai Gurudev.